The siren started like a knife. Cut through the thick, heavy air of the Supermax. Red lights flashed across the narrow hallway. Steel doors slammed in a chain, one after another, like thunder moving down the tier. Daniel Cole stood in the center of his cell on B unit, hands on the concrete desk, heart racing. A voice came through the speaker, "Lockdown. All movement stop." The floor shook with the force of the doors. In that cold second, he felt the whole prison, America's hardest place, hold its breath. He stared at the slot in his door, the small rectangle where food trays came and went. The slot snapped shut with a metallic bite. Silence followed. Real silence. No TV. No talking. No footsteps. Just the low hum of air and the smart camera watching him from the ceiling. A minute crawled by. Then 5. Then 10. He kept his eyes on the faint line of light under the door, waiting for a shadow to pass. Nothing moved. It was like the building itself had turned to stone. Then, from the vent above the steel sink, Daniel heard a sound. Fuzz. Tap tap. It was the code some of the men used to talk. Soft, risky, and hidden. He pressed his ear to the cinder block wall. Tap tap tap. Fip fip. He counted the beats like letters. Tomorrow, transfer. H unit. The message came slow, broken, and full of fear. H unit. The most locked-down corner inside the most locked-down prison. The place with almost no sound except your own heartbeat. The place where time got even heavier. Before he could tap back, the siren screamed again. All inmates, stand back from the door. Face the wall. Daniel did as told. He pressed his palms to the concrete. The door rolled open just an inch and a red beam swept the room. A team outside spoke short words into radios. B-14 secure. The door closed. A new sound rose from the yard beyond his wall. It was not normal, high, whining, and fast, like a bee that had swallowed an engine. The lights flickered once. Then the intercom cracked. Code black. All staff. The sound in the yard grew louder and then stopped in a single hard pop. Everything went still. Daniel's chest tightened. He could feel something waiting on the other side of the concrete. He didn't know what it was, only that it did not belong inside ADX. And that was the most terrifying thing he could imagine. He held that breath with the prison, held it until his ribs ached, wondering what had just reached the Supermax and what it meant for him. The morning before the sirens had been like every other morning in ADX Florence. A small click woke him at 5 a.m. Lights rose from dim to bright without asking. He stood from his concrete bed and rolled his thin blanket tight. The cell was long and narrow. Bed, shelf, desk molded into the wall, a stainless steel sink toilet at the far end, and a small window no wider than his hand. The window showed a slice of sky and a jagged tooth of the Rockies far away. No streets. No people. Just distance and weather. Breakfast came through the slot. Milk carton. A small piece of fruit. Tray in, the officer said. Daniel stepped back, hands visible. That was the rule. Always show hands, always move slow, always speak when spoken to. He ate at the desk in the quiet and tried not to think about time. In Supermax, time was the loudest thing. It filled the room. It filled your head. Sometimes it felt like a second was a whole hour, and a day was a whole year. He cleaned the steel sink with a single square of soap. He counted the cinder blocks from the floor to the ceiling. He did push-ups, 10 sets of 10, then sit-ups, then wall squats. Exercise in a box. The camera watched him do it all. At 9 a.m., a voice on the speaker called his name and number. Colby 14. Movement. He stood by the door, hands behind his back, thumbs out. 2 officers came with a third behind them. Hands through, one said. He slid his wrists through the trap. The cuffs bit cold. They opened the door and told him to step out. Turn. Kneel. Ankles cuffed. Chain to the waist. Everything measured, everything known. They walked him down the silent hallway, boots clicking on polished concrete, past other doors with other men inside. Each door was a world. Some men talked to themselves. Some stared at the ceiling. Some prayed. None of them touched anyone. Not here. Not in this place. Outside the air felt like glass. Clear, hard, and thin. They took him to a recreation pen, a cage within concrete walls, open to the sky with heavy metal mesh above. He looked up. A square of blue. A hawk riding a current, free and small. He closed his eyes and stood in the sun for a full minute, letting it warm his face. That was the best minute of the day and he knew it. Time, the officer said after an hour. Back to the cell. Lunch tray. The same rules. The same slot. He ate and read a page from a thick, old paperback with rounded corners from many hands before his. In the afternoon, he wrote a letter to his sister, Amy. He could not say much. Every line had to be careful. "I'm okay," he wrote. "Tell Mom I can see the mountains when the light is right." He folded the page and sat on the bed, listening to the hallway. A distant clack. A key turning somewhere. The soft sound of wheels on a cart. The building kept moving in small ways while all the big things stayed still. As the day faded, shadows stretched across the desk. The block took on its evening hush, the special quiet that comes before the final count. That was when the tapping began. Faint at first. Then clear enough to read if you knew how. Daniel pressed his ear to the wall and counted what he heard. New arrival, rumor. H unit move. He closed his eyes and pictured the unit. More cameras, more control, more silence. A place where the rules had even tighter rules. He tapped back, short and simple. "You okay?" The answer came slow. "Not sure." Dinner came and went. The sun thinned to a thread and then cut off, leaving only the fixture in the ceiling and the blue glow around the door. Daniel lay on the bed and practiced breathing like his public defender had taught him years ago. "Breathe into the count," she had said. "Find the square. For in, hold 4, for out, hold 4. He did it again and again until the edges of the room softened. He almost felt sleepy. Then the sirens split the air. Now, with the unit in full lockdown and that strange pop still ringing in his head, Daniel stood frozen, listening for answers. A radio crackled outside. Boots ran. Fast this time, not the slow, trained pace he knew. "South Yard. Confirm. Object down." Another voice came. Calm, controlled, but tight. "Secure all wreck. No movement until we clear." Someone asked, "What is it?" The answer did not come. Minutes turned to a thin kind of hour. He stared at the slot. He stared at the camera. He stared at the small window and the last smear of red light folding behind the mountains. The prison felt even heavier than before, like the concrete had doubled in weight and settled deeper into the earth. To keep his mind from racing, he thought about routine, the way life in the Supermax was supposed to work. Meals. Just wreck in a cage. Showers on a schedule. Legal calls sometimes. Medical checks sometimes. Step-down reviews if you stayed clean and stayed calm. Tiny privileges that felt like huge ones in here. A book, a magazine, a radio with bad reception, a photo of family. The rules made a net, and the net kept everyone from falling through. That was the idea. But nets could also catch you so tight you forgot how to breathe. A key turned. A slot clicked open on a door down the tier. "Tray out," an officer said to someone else. The voice sounded normal. That made it worse. Normal meant they wanted you to think everything was fine. He was not sure it was. He lay back and stared at the ceiling. "Tomorrow, transfer. H unit," he repeated in his head. The word tomorrow felt like a mountain in his chest. If the rumor was true, his world would shrink even more. Fewer words. Fewer steps. Fewer minutes of sky. He tried to picture it without panicking. He tried to picture anything else. He thought of his sister's backyard grill in July, smoke curling up, kids laughing. He thought of the sound of a real door with wood and a knob, not steel and a motor. He thought of ice in a glass. The hallway exploded with noise. A heavy crash came from the direction of the yard gates, followed by a shout so sharp it cut through. The cuffs closed around Daniel's wrists with a snap. The door slid wider, and 2 officers in black body armor stepped inside. Their faces were set, no talk, no hesitation. One officer hooked the chain at his waist to the cuffs. "Move." The order was sharp. Daniel obeyed. They pulled him into the hallway where more officers stood lined up like a wall of black shields. Radios kept spitting clipped words. South Yard, still not cleared, all inmates remain contained. He caught just enough to know that whatever had landed out there was still a mystery. The walk was faster than usual. They weren't doing the slow, calm pace of controlled movement. This time their boots hit hard, echoing through the concrete halls. The air smelled faintly of smoke, though Daniel couldn't tell if it was real or just his mind filling in blanks. When they turned the corner, he saw something that froze him mid-step. The glass viewing panel of a door ahead was spiderwebbed with cracks. Inside, a man pounded his fists against the window, his face wild, his mouth moving in silent screams. 2 guards pushed him back with shields and shut the view with a heavy metal shutter. Daniel had never seen that before. Here, inmates were ghosts behind steel, silent, hidden. But tonight, the walls were letting their cracks show. Eyes forward, one officer barked, shoving him on. He did. But the image of the man's face burned into his mind. What had he seen? What had driven him to slam against the door like that, breaking the one rule everyone lived by in ADX? Don't draw attention. They led Daniel down another tier and into an elevator that groaned as it dropped. The hum of the motor mixed with the muffled wail of the siren above. When the doors opened, the hallway was darker, narrower. Heavy doors lined the walls, each marked with bold black letters, H Unit. His stomach sank. The officers unlocked one of the cells and pushed him inside. The room looked almost the same as his old one, but smaller, colder. The window slit was even thinner. There was no desk, no shelf, just bed, sink, toilet. The camera in the ceiling was bigger, the red light pulsing like a watchful eye. He turned to the slot, waiting for words, rules, instructions, anything. The door shut with a metallic slam. Silence dropped. Then came the tapping. Not from the side wall this time, but faintly through the vent. Tap, tap, tap. He strained to listen, barely catching the message. South Yard breach. Something came in. His chest tightened. A breach. In the most secure prison in America. Something had crossed the line no one was supposed to cross. Hours dragged. He lay awake on the thin mattress, eyes locked on the camera, ears sharp for any new sound. Around midnight, the lights cut to dim mode. The silence pressed heavier, almost alive. Just as he thought he might drift, the floor shuddered. A deep boom rolled through the unit, rattling the vent above his head. Then voices rose, sharp and urgent. "Get the team down there now," one voice shouted, muffled but fierce. Boots thundered past. Radios screamed with overlapping calls. Another inmate down the hall shouted back in anger or fear. The whole block